All right, y'all. I hope you got your dance moves in, y'all. We have 24 karat magic. I asked y'all to put one word to describe your mood in the chat, and my mood is magical. It is sunny over here in New York City, and I'm feeling good. Susan's feeling grateful. Leilani's feeling vibrant. I love that word. Come on, somebody. Where else? Gracie loves the dancing. I'm a okay, Gracie. I'm gonna have to call you up next time. We're going to see those moves, okay? Stephanie's feeling ready. Amanda's feeling pumped. Al's feeling alive. Okay, Al, I love that. I see the alliteration there. Y'all, this is what we want to see, okay? This today is going to be such a great session, okay? I am so incredibly excited. We are talking all about how to build an active fundraising board, and it's going to be so amazing. As you know, I am Floyd. I am the host who gives you the most. Come on, somebody. Y'all can stay connected with me. That's my little QR code. I'm trying to be trendy. And let's keep the conversation going on LinkedIn when this is over, y'all. I want to hear what was your favorite part. I want to hear what spoke to you, what came alive, because we are one big fam. I always say that. This information is not just to be in this house. We're going to spread the word far and wide. We're going to let people know all the things that we are doing and all the things that we are learning all together. I work with small orgs my entire career. I'm the director of community and partnerships. I love my little Enneagram, and we are going to do so much. Oh, come on, somebody. I can make anything. See, I'm here for, thank you. Thank you. Y'all, I am so excited. Today, we are going to go from bored, me on, let me get myself together, to bored. I actually believe that your board, if you have a strong board, you can do anything. If you have people who are engaged with your mission, who are engaged with your cause, you can go to the moon, like we talked about in 24 karat magic, okay? And so today, we have the number one, we have the board specialist that you are going to be in for a treat. I cannot wait for you guys to hear a little bit more from Sabrina. It's going to be amazing. Okay, come on, Lola. Yep, okra. I love that, y'all. So before we get into it, we are gonna go through a little bit. I know we have a lot of guests in the house, so GiveButter is the most loved nonprofit fundraising platform. I got some updates for you, okay? Because you know I love to give. We are GiveButter, and I love to give y'all something, okay? And we have some amazing updates for you. So we actually just rolled out a major CRM update for Engage. I'm so excited, and for Track. So now you can actually add things like names, birth dates, gender, company subscription preferences. So if they only want to get your email on the 1st and the 4th, okay, you can make a note of that. You can add more notes, tags, and more custom fields. Of course, you're going to be getting the slides after this when this is all over. So make sure you go and check out that link, and you can learn all of the new features that we have rolled out with our CRM. We are going to, obviously the recording, the slides are going to be emailed to you after the webinar. People ask all the time, so the answer is already yes. Make sure you use the Q&A chat to send your questions. We're going to do an entire Q&A section about all about your board. We're going to get into the nitty gritty details, okay? And Sabrina's going to go deep with y'all. So make sure you use the Q&A so we can track all those questions. Use emojis. Okay, you already know that I be talking back with y'all. We are one big GiveButter fam, y'all. So I want to see what you're saying. Use emojis. Let me know. Use the chat as well, and keep it respectful. And make sure you're chatting to everyone and not just hosts and panelists, okay? Obviously, we're going to do our welcome and introductions. We already talked about our announcements. We're going to go through some information about the board, not Plan Giving. Plan Giving is Monday, so get ready. Next month. And then we're going to do a live Q&A. So before we jump into it, I want to do a little bit of a poll. So how are you guys feeling right now about your board members in your organizations? So let me see if I can launch this poll. Hold on, y'all. Poll time. Okay, launch. So how involved is your board in fundraising? 0, I'm still building a board. 1, we have 0 participation. 2, you have a few participants, all the way up to 5 that their fundraising is on fire. Let's see where we're at. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of 1s, a lot of 2s. Okay, no problem. We're gonna give y'all about 5 more seconds to answer. So get those votes in, y'all. Don't delay. Where are you at? 0 or a 5? Where are we feeling at? Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of twos in here. A few people participate. So that's better than nothing. That's better than nothing. You have a base, okay? And my goal, I always say whenever we launch these polls, my goal is I want to get you to the next level, okay? So I want you to really pay attention, get these notes on, and let's see how you can actually go and grow this year with your board. So before we dive into the content, I actually want to share a little story about my board experience. So I have been blessed to be able to build a governing board. I've also built advisory boards. I built advisory boards in 5 cities at one time, actually, fun fact. And I've built multiple junior boards. And so I have one good story that I want to share. So once upon a time, I watched Bridgerton over the weekend. So I got my dearest Rita. I have a couple things to share. But one person, his name is Craig. He actually works for a finance firm. And I remember meeting Craig in Baltimore a few years ago, and we had a really great conversation. And he was talking about how he enjoyed what we do. The organization at the time, as you guys know, we provided free sports for kids. And so he was talking about how he felt aligned with the mission. He wanted to give back. He wanted to help. He wanted to serve, but he was looking for the best way to do so. And I was like, go for a good check. And he was just like, well, what about, do you have a board? And I was like, okay, well, a check might be easier, but it's okay. And I was like, let's talk about it. What are you thinking about for joining this board? Because at the time we were kind of getting the party started on what we wanted our board to even look like. So from there, I actually got him involved with our advisory board. He had a lot of conversations. He had a lot of meetings. And then the one thing that he said was, how about we launch a soccer tournament? And here I go again, Craig. A check would be easier, okay? A check would be, but he said, but I know a lot of people in this company would be invested. They would be involved. They would come out and do the soccer tournament, and they would also go on to be volunteers, okay? I said, you know what? A check would be easier, but let's just try it. So not only did we launch the soccer tournament that year, but we ended up raising over $10,000 from all of the people in that company. But the story doesn't end there. The story does not end there. So what happened was, not only did we get volunteers from that event, but then Craig now began to mobilize them over that year. He engaged them. He let them know, hey, here's where your money went. Here's what's going on. Here are all the kids that we've been able to support because of that one tournament. And then next year they came back to us, and guess what, y'all? They ended up raising over $22,000. So I want this to be a lesson to you all. Sometimes the magic, like we talked about the magic. Oh my gosh, Craig from Baltimore. Yes, Hannah. Oh my God, I love that. Yes, sometimes the magic is found in the mundane moments. You might be thinking, okay, just send me a check. This would be so much easier than doing all this other. No, you have to build rapport and you have to build relationship, because I promise you, it is going to provide dividends. It's going to multiply, okay? Magic multiplies. Come on, somebody. And that is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how can you actually start multiplying the magic with your board. And the person to help me do that is the one and only Sabrina Walker, always on vacation, Hernandez. Y'all, I want to bring Sabrina up. Let me stop sharing my screen so that people can see you in full. Okay, come on now. Let me go ahead. Are you pinned? Can y'all see her? Okay, good. Y'all, Sabrina is from Edinburgh, Texas. Sabrina, how you doing?
I am doing great. I'm not always on vacation, Floyd. I mix work and vacation together.
Every time I email Sabrina, I'm like, Sabrina, can we chat? Okay, well, I'm coming back from my cruise, so but you know what? I'm trying to get to your level. That's what I'm working towards, okay? That's what I'm working towards. Sabrina, you are the president and CEO of Supporting World Hope. Sabrina provides both training and ongoing coaching for individuals and teams in every single aspect of development. And a fun fact is she has a dog named Gizmo and a cat named Peanut Butter. Come on, somebody. I love that. I love that. Sabrina, we're going to get into all the details, but can you share a little bit about your story? Because your story, in my opinion, is so incredibly powerful. How did you come up with Supporting World Hope, and how did you get to where you're at right now?
Well, it all goes back to vacations. Look, I worked really hard as a CEO of a nonprofit organization for over 20 years. And it's a lesson too. I worked hard. I was successful at it. I took my operating budget, and we'll get into that in introductions. It cost me, right? I got diagnosed with two blood cancers, lymphoma and multiple myeloma. And I thought, as I sat in the hospital room, from a stem cell transplant that I don't want anybody else to go through this. And so I launched my company, Supporting World Hope, to help stressed out, overworked, sometimes underpaid nonprofit leaders.
I love that. I love that so much. Are you, let me make sure you're spotlighted. I want to see it. Spotlight. Okay.
All
Can everybody see us both? I don't know how it's working. Can
right.
everybody
I can see you.
Okay. Well, I'm so grateful for you, Sabrina. I think that your story is so incredibly powerful, and I think that you're so incredibly powerful. You use the pain as a platform, and then use the pain as to power for so many other people. And so I'm so grateful for you. I'm going to hand it all over to you so you can go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Joshua. He works in oncology. I love oncologists. They saved my life. Well, God saved my life, but you know what? He empowered the oncologist. So thank you. So I asked for grace. I'm going to share my screen. I'm not the best. The tech gods always give me trouble. So let's see if we can do this. So I was told that you can do this from Google Drive, and I did it. Oh my God, I did it. So yes, again, my name is Sabrina Walker Hernandez, President and CEO of Supporting World Hope. I provide training and coaching to individuals. Floyd talked about my dog and my cat, but I studied political science and public administration. I attained a nonprofit management certification from Harvard Business School, and I'm a certified consultant, coach, best-selling author, and facilitator, love facilitating, who help nonprofits and small businesses build relationships that increase revenue. So what you are seeing here is these great pictures that I get to step outside of my comfort zone every now and then. Skydiving, swimming with dolphins, rappelling. And I put these here just to remind people that there's growth on the other side of your comfort zone. I am not, let me repeat, I am not an adventurous person. This is all my husband or my best friend, or I'm doing a fundraiser, which was the repellent, repelling down the building, that peer pressured me into doing these things. And trust and believe, I got sick this past weekend at Disney on the teacup ride. That's who I really am. But this is me stepping outside of my comfort zone, and it was great learning. And so some of the things that I'm going to share with you today will be a little bit outside of your comfort zone, because we don't look at boards in that way, but I absolutely love them. I think there's power in the board, especially if you get the right people going in the right direction, and all on board. So what do? I do training, webinars, and workshops, keynote speaking, leadership, board, and strategic planning retreats, executive and fundraising coaching, and consulting. And let's just start out with, the board is authorized by the state and supporters, but the executive director, the CEO, is authorized by the board. Okay, but we know that it's a partnership. So, and a partnership is negotiated and developed with mutual respect for each other's roles and responsibilities. And so how do you start negotiating that? How do you start developing that mutual respect with your board? You have to form a partnership, because the organization's health depends on effective partnership between the board and the executive director or the CEO. So I am, from this point on, and probably going to refer to the title as CEO. That was my title. And that's the language that I feel comfortable with. But no, I'm talking about the executive director, CEO, founder. I will put a little point here. The reason why we chose the title CEO is because oftentimes nonprofits, CEOs, or nonprofits in general come in servitude, and they don't come, remember, don't come in servitude, you come in service. And so when you're meeting with a bank CEO, you are a CEO too, right? And you bring value to the table, and you have to understand and own that value. And also that lets the CEO of that business understand that they're dealing with the CEO of a business, of your nonprofit business. So that's my little point there. So I won't be saying executive director, CEO from here on out. I'll be saying CEO. But it requires regular and open communication between the board chair and the CEO. It requires a willingness on everyone's part to examine their assumptions. And what happens most in this area of assumptions, there's a couple of assumptions going on that I've seen that causes trouble. One is the board sometimes assumes that they are in charge of the staff. And I will say this very clear, if you have staff, the only staff that the board is in charge of is the executive director. The executive director is the only position that the board hires and fires. The CEO is in charge of everyone else. So don't dibble dabble, it causes trouble. Let's suspend those assumptions. Some of the assumptions that the CEO makes is that these board members know what they're doing. And that's not the case. You have to educate them, even if they've served on other boards before, even if they are very successful in their respective careers, you still have to educate them and you still have to have a process to bring them on. So everyone has to be willing to suspend some of their assumptions. And there's a benefit. There's a benefit for regular and systematic feedback and assessment. And you may need to redefine what that looks like as the organization grows and becomes more complex. It's not, well, this is how we do it because we've always done it this way. As the organization becomes more complex, you have to change how you do things. So if you're growing your board and you start off with 3 board members and now you're at 21 board members, you can't treat it the same way. Or you're at 7 board members, or you're at 12 board members. It cannot be done the same way. If you started out as a all volunteer board and now you have a paid CEO and staff, it has to change and it has to evolve. And so lucky for you, my superpower is building relationships. I don't say that lightly. That superpower was deemed to me by one of my board members. It was an observation that he made, and since then I embraced it. And so I'm embracing that. I even wrote a book in partnership with Jack Canfield called The Builder Approach. I laid that out in the book, and most people, I go, Jack Canfield, and I go, okay. And I go, the chicken soup for the soul guys, y'all. And they're like, oh, okay. So chicken soup for the soul guy. And I used this approach for over 15 years as the CEO of nonprofit organization. I increased my annual operating budget from $750,000 to $2.5 million, completed a $12 million campaign, started and grew an endowment to over $500,000, and had 180 days of cash reserve. And my organization, get this, was located along the Mexico-Texas border in the 3rd poorest county in the United States. It's the border area we always trying to defend, and we're not as bad as the news says. So get that out there in the Rio Grande Valley, but that's what's my dynamics. And I put that there so I can say for those organizations that are in rural areas, in urban areas, it does not matter. There are quality board members out there. You have to build that relationship with them and you have to move forward with it. And so hopefully I'm going to share some strategies today that is going to help you build that fundraising board that you so much desire. So here's the kicker. And this is where people get quiet on me when they start complaining about their board. I always start off with, it starts with you. So what are you bringing to the table? How are you branding yourself? How are you building trust? Do you have open and honest communication with your board? Are you consistent with your board? Now, consistent, let me define that in a small way, something you control. Because I talk to people all the time that don't have this. Do you have a standing meeting for your board of directors? Is there calendar? Does your board know that we meet every second Tuesday of the month at 11:45 a.m. to 1 p.m. or every third Wednesday of the month from 6 to 7:30. And it's standard and it's on the calendar and it's been shared with them and they have a calendar alert and they have the calendar and they are receive an email reminder or a phone call reminder. Are you being consistent? Are you being reliable? Is the agenda sent out 72 hours in advance so that they can read the minutes, so they can look at the organization budget, so that they can look at the minutes, the organization budget, know what the agenda is going to be about. A lot of times it starts with you. And are you working hard? I know you're working hard. You have decided you're going to start this organization. You are CEO of a nonprofit organization, but are you working hard and smart, right? You cannot ask people to do something that you would not do yourself. And so you have to brand yourself. So again, one of the quickest ways you can do to brand yourself is to run an efficient, focused, and collaborative board meeting. Have your agenda set up in a way that you are inspiring your board members, which we're going to talk about, that you are sharing stories, that you are talking, that 45 minutes of an hour and a half meeting is about your strategic goals. And of course, one of those strategic goals is fundraising. Are you talking about fundraising? So these are the things that you can do. It starts with you. There's no way around that. If you want a fundraising board, if you want a powerhouse board, if you want an active board, it starts with you.
I love that. I just want to jump in real quick. Can you hear me?
I can.
I just want to say one thing that I think is so incredibly important. Sabrina just said, brand yourself. And I want to highlight that because you attract what you are. You attract what you are. So if you're actually being trustworthy, if you're laying out the meeting minutes, if you're setting them in advance, if you're giving yourself that time and you're saying, I'm going to put myself together, you are telling other people how they need to show up. Right? You are telling other people how they need to show up. Are you on time? Are you responsible? Are you following up? Are you giving people exactly what they need? You attract what you are. So if you are being light, if you are walking out shining that light, you're going to find the people who are attracted to that specific light, right? I found Craig, but I always say Craig found me. Craig found me because we laid out exactly what we were looking for in a board. And he said, you know what? I meet these qualifications and I'm ready to step in. And look at what they've done. Even more things that I'm not even at the organization and they're still serving. So I just want to put that out there. I love that.
Thank you, Flora. Thank you for the amen corner, because it does start with you. And then strategy number 2, I love the story about Greg, because you have to unleash their potential. Everybody associates fundraising with making the ask. That is only 5% of fundraising. And if you're trying to force your board into a role that they do not fit in, it is not going to work. So you need to understand and identify their strengths and lean into them. So door opener. Floyd's story is a perfect example of a door opener. He opened the door and lended his credibility to that organization to establish a relationship with his corporation, which resulted in a gift. Didn't necessarily ask. He didn't invest his time in that 5% of asking. He was a door opener. He parlayed his credibility. And so fundraising is about more than asking. So it is not about always trying to get your board to ask for money. You have to figure out their strengths and you have to lean into their strengths. So identifying. 10% of fundraising is identifying. That is who's giving. Who is giving? And then it's qualifying. It is saying, okay, they're giving, but do they have an affinity towards our organization? Are they passionate about our mission? And then 60% of fundraising is cultivating. That is top 6 ways to cultivate. That is picking up the phone, talking to people, face-to-face visits, getting them on the newsletter list, having them follow on social media, asking them for advice, getting them to events, getting them to volunteer. Greg's story is a perfect example, getting them to volunteer. It is 5% of asking, and people get that fear of asking. I call it the fear of the 5, but if they do cultivation right, lots of times you don't even have to do that formal statement of, will you consider a gift of $22,000? That probably was never uttered, but the staff, Greg's staff, put together an event that raised $22,000 because of his ability to be a door opener and his ability to be a cultivator. And then it's thanking. So they're still around and they still have this partnership with the organization because they were thanked properly. And so 15% of fundraising is thanking. And so how are you using your board members in these capacities? And are you trying to force all of your board members to be askers? Because that's not going to work. Out of a board of 21, I had 3 people who made fundraising asks. That's it. But we were able to raise over $2.5 million and do a $12 million capital campaign. Because the secret sauce in fundraising is relationships. Cultivation, 60%, is building relationships, and in 15% is thanking, that's maintaining relationships. The same thing you do to get them is what you have to do to keep them. So figure out and unleash their potential, identify their strengths, and lean into them. Strategy 3 is inspire them. So we talked about the agenda. How do you brand yourself? How do you show up? Your agenda is very key to inspiring your board of directors towards fundraising. You got to share the mission. And how do you share the mission? One thing you can simply do is put the mission statement at the top of every agenda. Please. The next thing you can do is start your board meetings off with mission moment. Why would you do that? What is a mission moment? So a mission moment is when you have a client come into the boardroom and say, this is why I come to this program. This is how the program benefited me. You give your board opportunity to ask some questions. It's 5 minutes. Why would you do that? Because people remember stories. And so I was fortunate, and I know I'm fortunate. I was fortunate because I served little kids. I was an after school program. So I would get a smiling, snaggy-tooth kid to come into the board meeting and talk about why they came to the after school program and tell their age and, you know, how old they are and why do they have to come and all of those things. But I've seen mission moments. I serve on 3 boards. I've seen mission moments for our museum. I serve on the museum board. They do mission moments, of course, very differently. They have exhibits up around the room. And so every board meeting, it kicks off with an exhibit around the room. And they don't just rely on mission moments. They also do mission mingles. And so mission mingles are a little bit different. Again, this is a larger board. And so with the mission mingles, then we get paired up during the beginning of a board meeting and we talk about the why we're serving on the board. Because a lot of times when you're serving on a larger board, and I'll get to a smaller board, when you're serving on a larger board, you don't know everybody in the room. And so it gives you opportunities to find out their story, to create those bonds, to build those relationships, because you want everybody moving towards the same vision. And if they don't know each other and they don't, those interactions, how are they going to move towards the same mission because you have not built that team? You want your team moving towards the same vision. That is your job as the CEO. And your team is, if you're fortunate enough to have staff, is your staff and your board. And so sharing those missions and having those mission moments are key. So mission moments, let's take away the obstacles. So there was a zoo, they had mission moments. They would bring in an animal every time. They brought in a snake one time, you know. So how many of us has ever get to, I don't like snakes. Let me just be very upfront and very clear. But to get the opportunity to touch a snake, to find out it's not slimy, to talk about the snake and its habitat, all of those things. You're doing all these things so that people have stories to go out and talk about. Hey, I serve on the zoo board. Did you know we had the snake and I got to touch it, and this is how much it costs to feed the snake, and this is how much it costs to do this. If you're an animal shelter, are you bringing the pets into the meeting? And for the people who work with populations such as the unhoused or battered spouses, you'll just have to tell the story from a different perspective when it comes to your mission moments. Use video. Tell the story from the perspective of the box that was once someone's home and now it's the moving box into their new home. You have to make the mission come alive for your board members. You have to inspire them. Now, moments of mission is another one. This takes a little bit of coordination. And I would tell you my failure in this, and I share it quite often. I am an organizer. That's what I do. So when we decided we were going to do moments of mission, what I did was sit around my boardroom and said, okay, Eddie, you're taking January, Sisto, you're taking February, George, you're taking this one, Ella, you're taking this month. And what I need you to do is, those are your months. And what you're going to do is talk to someone that month about the mission of the organization. And come back to the board and let us know. That was it. That's all I did. And so don't do that. You have to also remind people. You also have to engage them. You have to remind them of the why. It's not just about crossing it off the list. And so I wanted to make sure you understood that, because sometimes I can get like, okay, they said do this, so I'm doing it. But there's always a reason behind what you're doing, and you have to remember that reason. And the reason is to inspire them. And you have to inspire them by making resource development fun. It can be competitive. I'm a competitive person. My board, people that served on my board and another board that I serve on, we're competitive people. And so being divided up and having goals and divided up into teams and making it fun. And it doesn't have to be at the organization expense sometimes. We had a board member who, if the board reached a certain amount of points, they did a grid system, then he took them out for a steak dinner to this restaurant that everybody wanted to go to at his own expense. I've been on teams where we're just in competition with each other, and it's really for bragging rights, nothing more than that. But we tapped into the competitive spirit. And then having a plan. Please inspire them by having a plan. And when I talk about a plan, I'm talking about a pathway. Have a pathway for your board members' success, a fundraising pathway. And so let me give you this as a clear example, because I don't think a lot of people understand what I mean by pathway. So let's say I'm invited to serve on this board, and the goal is to raise, during the interview, to raise $3,000. Every board member is responsible for $3,000. Well, you got to give the board member a pathway on how to be successful for that. So $3,000, here's the pathway. You have to become a member of our Heritage Associate. So the minimum to become a member of the Heritage Associate is $1,500. So that right away tells them, oh, I'm giving $1,500 because I have to be a member of the Heritage Associate. Got it. Personal giving, taken care of. I'm halfway there towards my goal. 2, you have to sell a table at our event. That event table is $1,000 at minimum. You have to sell 1 table. 3, you have to sell 5 raffle tickets at $100 each. That is your pathway to the $3,000. Oftentimes, we don't give a pathway. We don't give a goal. And we're just constantly talking about fundraising, and we're not creating a successful pathway. And so no one feels inspired to go down that pathway, because we're always talking about fundraising and we never seem to finish. And so at some point, you got to give people success, and you got to celebrate that. And that leads to—
I was going to say one quick thing, because I see we have a lot of questions. So clearly you are touching on something great here. But I see a lot of questions, and I want to just kind of harp on this a little bit with the inspire them part. Remember what Mallory Erickson always says. She always says that hope drives motivation up. And fear drives motivation down. So we're seeing a lot of questions in here about how do we get all of our board members to participate financially, or how do we get them to fundraise and all that different stuff. If you're leading with the fundraising component, majority of people are not fundraisers, right? Yeah. A majority of people have a trigger when they say, I have to start asking for money and go out of their comfort zone. Remember, we talked about the magic, and the magic can multiply, but they have to feel the magic first. You know what I'm saying? So sharing these stories and all that different stuff, it's important. It's not just about them having a story to go and tell. It's about them feeling that magic and embodying your mission, right? You don't want to just tell them a story. You want them to embody the mission. That's why we say, bring them on site if you can. That's why you say, have them be a volunteer. That's why you say, have them actually participate and engage on a deeper level, because now they're not just regurgitating my story. They have their own story to tell. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. And let me go back, because I obviously glazed over this. Asking is only 5% of fundraising. So if you're beating your board over the head about asking, you're putting the emphasis on the wrong piece of fundraising. Put the emphasis on cultivation, building relationships. If you get your board members to talk and cultivate, and they're members of the Rotary, and they have those stories to share with their fellow Rotarians. They're members of the chamber, and they have those stories to share with their fellow chamber members. If they're city council members and they're sharing those stories, if they're business people and they're sharing those stories at your businesses, they are fundraising. It will result in the ask. So I will not, I was a CEO, just like you. I had limited amount of time. And so I needed to understand, where did I need to put my time with my board, because they're busy people. You're not going to get them to be great at all aspects of the fundraising pie. So if I can get them to be great or good at the pieces that they feel comfortable with, and hopefully most of them feel comfortable with that 60% or even that 10%. I had a person that was a 10% of the door opener, and she raised millions of dollars. So if I can get them comfortable with the 60% and the cultivation, I can come in and say, will you consider an investment of $10,000? Because that's what the ask is. Build a relationship, lend your credibility to me. We go in together to an ask meeting. You do your small talk. You share the stories that you've been learning at the board meetings. And then when it comes down to it, turn it over to me as the CEO, and I will happily say, will you consider an investment of $10,000?
Y'all, I see we have like 17 questions in the Q&A. I think that we're going to get to some of these questions in the rest of the slides. So let's keep on going.
We will. I promise. Floyd made me promise to leave 10 minutes at the end for question. So leverage their connections. Give board members prominence. Are they listed on the letterhead? Are they on the website? Are they featured in social media, on the newsletter? Is their news release prepared when a member joins the board? Are they sworn in? Are you elevating the importance of being on this board? Are you elevating the importance of the mission? Are you elevating the importance of their contribution to the success of this organization? And if you're not doing that, then speaking back to what Floyd said, you have set the standard. And the standard is, I can just show up, not read the board packets, not be engaged in this process, get up, leave, and then come back next month and do the same thing over and over again. You have to leverage their connection. You have to give them some prominence. So, and that goes back to fundraising, because remember, what is your board? Your board is your force multiplier. What that means is, you cannot be everywhere all the time. You can't be. So you have to select board members that will represent you in the circles where they have influence. And then once you have them, The people in their circles need to know that they're a part of the board. So, for example, if you bring in someone that's, let's say, a lawyer, and they're there because they have connections in the legal industry. But if you never share with anyone that they're on your board, you don't give them stories to talk about, they're not going out and talking about it. You haven't shared that they're a board member. You're not equipping them to leverage their connections. And so leveraging the connections that's one of the pieces that you have to do. You have to discover their stories. You have to build a relationship with your board members in order to get them to fundraise and to understand this. You're building a relationship with them. That includes showing an interest in their work, recognizing their birthdays. All right, when you have your monthly board meetings, are you celebrating your board members' birthdays? Do you know their inventory? This one is critical, knowing their inventory. Do you know it's casual conversations. It is knowing, and I'll use my board members as an example. It is knowing that Ella has a QVC shopping problem and she has a whole room of items at her home. And when you need some silent auction items, that you can go to her QVC closet. That's how close you guys are. It's knowing that Sisto has a timeshare in Mexico. And when you need a live auction item, you can go to him and say, you have a timeshare in Mexico, would you consider making that a live auction item? Is knowing that Joe has a condo at South Padre Island. Is knowing that Eddie has a brother-in-law that has a ranch. It's getting to know them because they don't think like that. Board members don't think like that, and you have to think like that for them oftentimes. And so discovering their stories and making notes of those assets, and then bringing that up when it is the proper time and when they have to do live auction items, or you're trying to do this raffle and you're trying to come up with these experiences. And you know that, oh, don't you know so-and-so at this place? Didn't y'all go to high school together? That's how we got Mario Lopez to be a keynote speaker at one of our galas. Our board president, Joe, went to high school with the person who was his publicist. I didn't find that out. How did I find that out? Because I discovered Joe's story, who's my board president. And so once a month, I had a meeting with him. We talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'm discovering these things. And I'm like, you know Mario Lopez? You know the publicist? Do you think that you can get him to come and be our keynote speaker? Because I know how much he charges. And that's how that developed. Do you know their communication preference? Everybody's not going to respond to an email. Stop. You can send an email out, and that's good. That's the first line of communication. But everybody's not going to respond to email. And you're getting frustrated because you're like, I sent them an email and nobody responded. I get crickets. Sometimes you got to pick up the phone. Sometimes you got to send a text. Sometimes you got to do WhatsApp. Sometimes you got to do pigeons. Sometimes you got to stop by their office. Everybody has a different communication style, and you can't rely on emails. A lot of people rely on sitting behind this screen, and maybe it's an effect of social media, of sitting behind this screen and not developing real relationships. I have a board member who you sent him an email and he was like, yeah, I saw your email, but I know you're serious when you pick up the phone and call me. Like, oh, okay. I had another board member, I don't like emails. Send me a text. And so everybody has their preference. And if you're trying to do a one-size-fit-all, that's why you're getting frustrated, and that's why your board member is not responding to things. So know that. And then you have to equip and educate them. You got to provide them with board education. I know these are, I'm making assumptions that they're qualified business leaders in the community. But there's no rules for a nonprofit. They're best practices. And so your job is to gather those best practices and educate your board and provide that board education. If you want them to do something, provide them with scripts, provide them with social media posts, sample letters, and emails. And with chat, OpenIA is so much more easier now because you can just put the prompt in there and it'll give you those samples. You got to hold your board members accountable for what they say they will do. So that's what your role is during the board meeting. It's a board meeting. It is not your job to sit and talk and be the only talking person during the board meeting. Your job is to let the board run the board meeting. That's why planning is key and having an agenda and getting together and putting the agenda together. But your job is to say, okay, okay, Susie said she will follow up with Jack at this company. Write that note. And then after the board meeting, you follow up with Susie and you say, hey, did you reach out to Jack? And she's probably going to be like, no, oh my God, I forgot. After the board meeting, I got so busy and I didn't do it. And you can say, okay, reach out, and she'll say, okay, I'll do it. And then your job is, again, to follow up with Susie a couple of weeks later and say, Susie, did you reach out to Jack? And she probably hadn't done it because life gets busy, right? But a week before that board meeting, Susie, did you reach out to Jack? Let me do it right now. That's not being bossy. That's holding people accountable. You can't get frustrated. You can't get in your feelings and be like, well, I ain't gonna beg nobody to do nothing. I hear it all the time. You have to give people grace. You have to understand that they're busy. You have to understand, especially if you're a founder, you're very passionate about this. And they might not have that same level of passion. And I'll say yet. And also, it's a part of personalities as well. And so, yes, you do have to hold people accountable, and you cannot be afraid of coming across bossy, and you cannot be afraid of ruining relationships, because that's what people tell me all the time. And you have to be explicit when recruiting board members. Set the expectations up front. Have an expectation agreement in place. Talk about fundraising during the recruitment process. Don't say, I've had so many people tell me, I don't want to talk about fundraising during the recruitment process because that's going to scare them away. But then you come to the first board meeting and what do? You talk about fundraising. So you just blindsided them, right? You set them up for failure and you set yourself up for failure. So define what that pathway is. Talk about it during the recruitment process. Give them a clear pathway to success, and it will make a difference in your fundraising. And what more you can do is what board members need from you as a staff is just make sure, again, you provide them with education, you give them the scripts, you hold them accountable, and you be explicit and you talk about fundraising. And then finally, you reach out and connect. I said this over and over again, we're all busy people. But you have to be intentional about building relationships with your board members if you want them to fundraise. And it needs to be beyond the boardroom. There's no way that you are going to inspire them. There's no way that you're going to bring that passion that's needed if you only talk to them once a month, if you're meeting once a month, or if you only talk to them if you are sporadically meeting. And if you only talk with them via email, and if you only talk to them quarterly, if you're meeting quarterly, you're not building a relationship. That's transactional. This is about creating a real relationship with your board members to inspire them towards your mission. And you put it on your calendar. You block out time to schedule meetups with your board members. This could be formal, it could be coffee, it could be ongoing happy hour. I don't care what it is. I got one more minute, Floyd, and I'll stop talking. But you have to do interaction. And this is another thing that I want to say. This is really going to help. Meet with your board chair once a month. You're in it together. The good, the bad, the ugly. Meet with your executive committee. I use my executive committee in the capacity of putting together the agenda for the board meeting. Can you put the agenda together for the board meeting yourself? Yes, you can. You're very smart. But we're talking about fundraising and we're talking about engagement here. And so having them meet for breakfast or whatever time frame that works, you bring a draft agenda. They have their input on that agenda. You assign who's going to talk about what, so you're not the one that's doing the talking. They get a moment to clarify and ask questions during that planning process. Golden. And identify a couple of board members that's going to be your board champions. These are the people that are going to have your back no matter what, that are on the board, who can be your mouthpiece. And so when people are not giving individually and you want to start individual giving and you want to bring it up, you have your board champions talk about it, not you. It's a peer-to-peer conversation. And so identify some board champions. So I'm going to stop talking now. And I am going to open it up for Q&A. And at this point, I'm going to stop the share and we will talk about the giveaway.
Yes, thank you so y'all. I know y'all are here, okay? Because the way that this Q&A is heated up, we're gonna get to as many as we possibly can. Y'all, we do have a maximize your nonprofit board checklist, all from Sabrina. So we just dropped that link in there. Grace, just keep dropping it. Just keep dropping it in there a few times so we can make sure that everyone sees it. But again, that is only for you all who showed up live. So please take advantage of that checklist from Sabrina. So let's get into some of this Q&A.
Sorry, I see somebody in there. April.
So let's talk about board recognition. What are some of the key things that people could do to actually recognize their board on a larger scale?
Okay, so this is something, I'll give a small example and I will give a larger example. So one is board certificates. When someone comes on your board, are you giving them a certificate? Why would you do that? They can hang it in their office. And when people come into their office, they're like, oh, you're a board member for such and such. And it opens up a conversation. And you can design a certificate using any software, but a board certificate. On a larger scale, what I love to do for my organization is December is Christmas. So have a Christmas banquet. And at the top of the Christmas banquet, have our annual meeting. And it really is like a 10-minute, like, approve the minutes from last year, and then have the board members invite their family members and have them being sworn in by a judge or an attorney, and understand and add some prominence to it, and then celebrate Christmas, right?
I love that. I love that. One thing that we also did was we had a board retreat, and we would have like a really nice board retreat, and I would also try to invite a special guest. So like the current mayor of Baltimore was at one of our board retreats, and there's a lot of different things that kind of make them feel special, and it was all expenses paid, so it was like a really nice environment. We have a couple questions about having a board that's spread across the US. How do you engage boards if they're all remote or if they're spread across the country, virtual? What are some tips on that?
Yes, so I serve on a board that is a virtual board, and I will say that it is a little bit of a difference because we're not sitting, but you can create engagement on Zoom, and you can create times where we come together. We do virtual board retreats, right? So a board retreat, and we commit to being on Zoom for a Saturday for a couple of hours over a weekend. And so we've done that. And we've also agreed that we're going to be intentional about getting to know each other. And so it's a little bit different, and it does take a lot of intentionality on the part of the CEO and a part of the board member. And as the organization grows, and hopefully we're in a growth phase, we have agreed that we would meet at least once a year in person. I served on a national board, and we met 4 times a year.
Wow.
A little bit, that can be costly, but we did.
I also think that like I'm working with an organization right now, and they're all over the world. Like we have some people who are in New Zealand, like 16 hours ahead of us. And one of the things that I try to do, I had a retreat actually a couple months ago, is we actually gave out gift cards to everyone to buy their own lunch. So we had like a working lunch together, and it was like special, you know what I mean? So just finding different ways to bring it to life. But the key thing I would say here, because I see a lot of questions, I know we're summarizing a couple of them, but I see a lot of questions around board engagement. The key thing is that it starts from the onset. You can't make somebody believe in something if they don't believe in it. You know what I'm saying? You can't just create something out of nowhere. They have to believe in it. That's why branding yourself is so incredibly important. If you know what you're about and you know what your organization is about and you're communicating that, you're communicating effectively where you're trying to go, remember, you're going to attract what you are. And those people are going to automatically be in alignment, right? Another great
have a board recruitment process in place. It's
100%.
not just because they want to be on your board as a warm body. Please don't do that to yourself. Have a board recruitment process in place where you actually interview. Think of it like a job. You interview board members.
100%.
So it's not, get away from the scarcity mindset of, oh my God, we have to take this person because there's not a lot of good board members out there.
100%. There are billions of people in this world. You're going to find somebody who believes, right? But do you believe? Come on, somebody. Let's talk about recruitment for a second, because like a lot of people are talking about, we have now, this is when you have the board. How do you get the members to begin with?
So I tell people, you cannot run your organization from your desk. You have to brand yourself. You have to get up. You have to go to the Rotary meetings. You have to go to the chamber mixers. You have to go to the Lions Club. You have to get out in the community, because that's where the movers and shakers are. And if you want a mover and shaker on your board, like attracts like. And so you have to get out. And if you are not willing to do that, then what will happen is, and that's where the result of the mother, brother, cousin on the board, because then you will begin to just have board members that are in your circle, which kind of defeats the purpose. Because again, the whole point of a board is to be a force multiplier. So I am not a banker. So I need someone from the banking industry on my board to influence that industry. I am not a financial advisor. I'm not a real estate agent. So I need to find the influencer in that arena that can represent our organization in that capacity. And so you're not going to find them sitting at your desk. You're not going to find, and I don't hate to say this, but I have to say it. I work with youth. I was not going to find those people by playing with the kids. I was not going to find those people by feeding the dogs and saving the cats, because they're not there feeding the dogs and saving the cats. They're out in their community at mixers and at the Rotary meetings and at, the chamber meetings and all of those things. So you have to move out of your comfort zone and get out there and engage with people to find the people that you want.
Now, I think we're going to have a part 2 of this, because we have over 20 questions and y'all keep asking the questions. So maybe we're going to do something on LinkedIn or something to answer some of these. But someone just asked a question about having a junior board or an advisory board. And this same thing can apply. One of the things that I did was every single major finance firm and law firm and all of their junior employees, what do they want? They want them to be in the community. So they all often have community outreach days. They often have mixers. They have to have lunch and learns. But I had to go and look first. The first thing that I did was, who are the most charitable firms in my city? And I found that list, and then I knocked on that door. I sent that email. I said, if you're looking for the one, let it be me. You know what I'm saying? But you have to put yourself in a position to receive. No one's going to just find you. There are too many people out there. It's not going to just come and hand into your lap. You have to get yourself in a position to actually get the placement, right? Yep. So it is 3:00, and I know we have so many good things. Grace is going to take a screen grab of some of these questions. Maybe we'll find a way to do like a LinkedIn or something. But I want to say, can y'all just shower Sabrina Walker Hernandez with some love in the chat? If y'all thought this was good, if y'all thought this was some magic, I want you to put that in the chat. Say thank you. Let Sabrina know that she was amazing. Y'all, Sabrina, we are so grateful for you. Thank you. Thank you for everything. And we appreciate you. And we're going to have you back soon. I know that's for sure. Y'all, while we're getting ready to end things off, I just want to say thank you again. So Grace will drop the link in the chat for the board engagement checklist for you all, so you can check that out. Next month, y'all, we are talking about planned giving. I know y'all talking about how we can build this monthly retention program. How do we get the large donors in the house? We are going to talk all about plan giving next month, and I hope to see you all there. And next month is June. That means we're getting ready to get into summer, enjoy the sunshine, but most importantly, enjoy the magic. Be blessed, y'all. Thank you so much for joining, and I'm so excited to have you all in the Give Butter fam. Bye, y'all. Have a good one.
It's Sabrina. So I wanted to continue the conversation that we started, and Floyd allowed me that opportunity to answer the questions that was in the chat. And so as we go through this, the hopes is to spend a couple of minutes on each question, just so the video is not too long, or the feedback is not too long. So Courtney asked about servitude versus service, and what's the difference, or can I elaborate more on that? So oftentimes nonprofit come with the mindset of they are coming in servitude. That means they have the mindset of, oh, I'm just a poor, this nonprofit, and I'm begging, and I'm here, and I'm just hoping this corporation is going to help me. And I'm saying, you don't come in servitude. Do not come with the mindset that you are begging. That's one. And or that the people that you're asking, the CEO of this company, or that you're asking, has more power or influence than you. You're coming in service. And so oftentimes research shows that companies that are philanthropic, that get their employees to volunteer at nonprofits, give them those kind of opportunities, have a better retention. It also shows that companies that align themselves with a nonprofit, right, will make them more favorable in the community. So you're coming in service. And so that's why you need to have that mentality of coming in service. It's a win-win, a win in the partnership for the corporation, and a win in the partnership for the organization. So you are a CEO, meeting with a CEO, and you both have something to offer, and you're not there as this, oh, I'm just this nonprofit and I really need your help and we are going to close without you. You bring something to the table. And also a volunteer only board with no staff. So I serve on an organization that has a volunteer board with no staff. And so as your board, as your organization grows, that will evolve. And there's certain things that a volunteer board with no staff will do that, or have to do, that an organization that has a staff or staff people won't do. So I give you an example. So like I said, I serve on a board that is a volunteer, no staff. So we had an event. And so I was the one who was running to every Dollar General, picking up hand towels. And I had to go to like $20 General so I can get these 50 hand towels, because I wanted them all in the same color, take them over to the vendor, get them embroidered, pick them up, and get them to the event. That's what I do for that nonprofit as a board member. Now I'm on another board that's been around for a very long time. They're established in the community. It's like 27 members. They have a CEO. They have a resource development position. They have an operations position. I don't have to do that for that organization. All I have to do for that, or not all I have to do for that organization, but I have to use my time in a different way. I have to use my time by connecting with donors, inviting them in to connect with the CEO, to get to have a tour of the facility. That's how I use my time and talent with that organization. So when you are a volunteer board, no staff, you're more hands-on. You're doing the things that staff maybe normally would take care of, right? So as the organization grows and becomes more complex, your board needs to grow and become more complex. And sometimes boards will get stuck in that mentality of trying to micromanage the program and micromanage all these things that don't need to be micromanaged once you hire someone to do that. And so another question is, how do you overcome board members who do not participate in meetings? Agendas are sent, information is requested, and meeting times are agreed on, but still no input from the majority of the current board. I'm burning out and trying not to get involved at the most basic level. So what I would say to that is, first of all, I want to be realistic with you. So some of the real steps that I would take is I would meet with each board member to see, just to see where they're at, to see and understand the lack of communication during the board meetings and the lack of engagement and what each individual board member needs. And then I would craft up my recommendations or my ideas. And then I would, hopefully you have a good board chair, and I would have a conversation with the board chair to say, this is what I found on my listening tour, and this is where I need your help for engagement. And also, I would say this as well. That's like some practical tips. But I will also say, I know you say you're doing the agenda and it's sent out. So who's doing the agenda? Are you doing the agenda only by yourself? Is it you and the board chair doing the agenda? And if it's you doing it by yourself, I would definitely say stop doing that. It needs to be a collaborative effort. And if it's you and the board chair and that's not working, then I would say maybe it should be you and the executive committee, right? Have a standing meet for breakfast or lunch where you present a draft agenda, and then y'all review the agenda and you make assignments on who's going to speak on those different topics at the board meeting. So what has happened is they've probably gotten very used to you presenting all of the information, but it should be the board chair who's running the meeting, and it should be the board members who's talking. And so having a very strategic agenda is going to help, and how you lay out your agenda is also going to help. So just a quick and dirty layout of an agenda. Start off with a mission moment, and then I don't spend time in board meetings doing reports. Reports go under consent agenda. Minutes go under consent agenda. Anything that's from the past kind of goes under consent agenda. 45 minutes of your agenda should be focused on your goals. And then 20 minutes should be about board education. And board education can be anything from, here's 5 donors. Everybody pull out their cell phones. Let's call these 5 donors each and say thank you. Come back together. How did that go? Did you leave voicemails? Some people might actually got to talk to someone, and they'll say, I got to talk to this person. They were really appreciative of what we did. So take 20 minutes to do that. And then end on a generative question. Now, what is a generative question? A generative question is not hard. It sounds hard and complicated, but it's not. So it might be something like, what was the last organization that you gave to? Why did you give? Or what organization impressed you this past week? Things like that to get them thinking, and then say, okay, how can we do that here? So that's what I would say to that. So I hope that answered your question. Also, there's more questions here, and here's another one. How does a nonprofit that is arts oriented begin to recruit or find board members? We are all volunteer community choir. So you need to, regardless of your mission, I'm going to say this, regardless of your mission, you need to have people. I always say this. I say, have someone with a marketing background, have someone with a financial background, banking background, legal background. Okay. So, how do you find people that love the arts? I will almost argue that they don't have to maybe perhaps love the arts, but they need to have those skill sets, right? But there are a lot of people who happen to love the arts and have those skill sets. So you have to go out to where art people are. Are you attending the symphony events? Are you attending the, let's say, the museum events? Are you attending different, if you want to pursue people that are in the arts, are you attending those different art related activities that are happening in your community? Because that's where you're going to find the people who are appreciative of the arts. Are you researching and talking to people in your community? Because what I know is I'm a Rotarian, and as a Rotarian, there's a lot of different members, and you get to know your members, and you get to find out, oh, this person really is passionate about the art. Oh, this person is passionate about whether that's music or this. You get to know people. So you have to get out in the community to find board members. There's different ways to recruit or to look for board members. Some people choose to put out on LinkedIn or an article in a newspaper or whatever that they're looking for board members, or make that announcement that they're looking for board members when they're in meetings and things like that. Our organization chose not to do that. We were very selective, and we wanted it to be considered a exclusive thing to be asked to serve on our board. And so a lot of our board members came about through other board members' recommendation and the CEO recommendation. And how I, again, got my recommendations to the board was getting out in the community and seeing people and understanding how they work. Another way is to get people to volunteer for your events or things like that. They don't have to be board members. And so volunteer committees, let's say if you're putting on an art show, or if you are whatever that is, they don't have to be board members to be involved in that. Get them on a task force, get them on that committee, and that could be your pipeline for board members, because then you'll see how they work. And you'll see, oh, they would make a good board member. Oh, they have a lot of connections. And so do it that way. And another one is colleges have art departments, high school have art departments. Talk to the people that are in those departments and say, this is what we're looking for. And do you have any recommendations? So I would go it that way. Here's another question. What are some of the strategies for getting all board members to contribute financially? Okay, so the best way to get all board members to contribute financially is, as a part of your recruitment process, you talk about board giving. So board giving should be a topic of conversation during the recruitment process. Now, let's say you have this board, you never talked about board giving, it's something that you want to implement now. Well, you need a good board champion to be the one to voice that. So that could be your board chair, that could be someone, your actual board champion. A board champion is someone who has your back, they're your speaking voice to the board, they are a person of influence and up on the board, and people listen to what they say. I say that board members have to give their time, their talent, and their treasure. There's no substitute for any of those: time, talent, and treasure. If you just want to give your time, then a committee is great for you. If you just want to give your talent, a task force is great for you. But we, as a board member, you're the highest level of this organization. So you need to give your time, your talent, and your treasure, and not one does not substitute for the other. Because it's very hypocritical for boards to go out and ask others to support an organization financially that they're not supporting financially. So you have to have a board champion that is going to speak that, or the board chair. And sometimes a consultant will come in, have board training. I do board training all the time. I'll come in and I'll say that. because it sounds people, it would be more received from a third party than it would be received from the CEO perhaps. And so all board members should be contributing financially. And a good way to also start that conversation is if you were talking about doing an annual campaign, where the first phase of the annual campaign is to give the family to give, right? And the family is the board. They're the closest to the organization. So remember that. I hope that helps you. So what if my executive director thinks the role of the board is to cast the vision and mission and not what you are saying? So the role of the board is to establish the vision and the mission, but it's the vision, the mission, the core values, and the strategic direction. So basically, a board has three functions. They have three primary roles. One is trusteeship. That is casting strategic, is strategic planning. It is casting that vision and mission, all of that. One is oversight. It's making sure that there's policies in place and that the organization is being ran efficiently. And some people say, let's not use the word oversight. Some people say, let's use the word governance. Are there policies in place for, anything? You need policy. Are there financial policies in place? Are there whistleblower policies in place? Are there so many policies out there that you need, right? So are they doing their part in that? And then third is ensuring necessary resources. And under ensuring necessary resources is fundraising. You are liable. Board members don't realize that. They're liable for the organization. When they said yes to the board, they said yes to ensuring necessary resources for that organization to fulfill its mission. You just can't come up with a mission and then not put in the work to have that be fulfilled. And so, as nice as it is to throw well wishes and hope, hope is not a strategy. Hope doesn't turn on the lights. Hope doesn't pay the CEO. Hope doesn't pay the program staff. You have to fundraise to do that. And fundraising can't not just be, oh, we'll get a grant for that. Because a sign of a healthy organization is that no more than 20% of their revenue comes from one source. And trust me, you don't want the situation that if this source of funding goes away, then our organization goes away. And so some boards can get very complacent. Let's say you got this large federal grant and you're earmarked, or you've been getting it every year for the last 20 years. It's not going to go away. And then, oops, one day it goes away. But you never put in place annual giving. You never did a special event. You never planned for the future when that money wasn't there. Then your organization goes away. All the people that you've been helping, no one's going to be there to help. All the staff that were employed, that goes away for them. And so boards need to think about that bigger picture and not get complacent in that. So I hope that helps you as well. So other questions here. We asked the board to each try and raise 2 to 3 for the silent auction of our annual fundraiser. Most of them pretty much refused. How do you deal with that? So I don't understand when you say, I'm sorry, I don't understand when you say they pretty much refused. So you're saying that the board members refused to do 2 to 3 silent auctions. I have a hard time with that. And so when I say I have a hard time with that, I have a hard time with it. It is a lack of education and knowing their role. It is a lack of understanding of how to go about building relationships, so that all you have to do is pick up the phone and talk to the person you've been building a relationship for an auction item. It is motivated by fear. And really and truly, you have to start with board education. That's how you deal with that. And let's say you invest in education, you bring in someone, they know what they have to do, and they just refuse to do it, then they're not the right board members. Bottom line. And sometimes they're not the right board members. If you came to me and you said, we have done board education, we are engaging with them, we are creating connections outside of the boardroom, we're providing a clear pathway for them to raise their money and to secure their auction items. I've had conversations with them. I know their inventory. I know they own this. I know they own that. And I've gone to them and said, you own this, will you donate this for an auction item? And they say no. Then you have to question, do you have the right board members? I think a lot of times they are refusing and you say, you give up on them. How do I deal with this? But they haven't been educated. They don't know. And if you've done all of those things and they still refuse, then they're not the right people. And sometimes that's the hard decision that has to be made. So what if I've created that pathway, yay for the pathway, and they fulfilled it with their own money? It's so appreciated, but we're struggling to grow our audience when fundraising starts and ends with the board. I understand what you're saying. So this is something I'm going to say with you. When you, because a lot of people are like, well, the board writes a check and they're doing their part. They got their pathway is established, but eventually they're going to go away and we need to grow our audience. So if you have a willing board that is giving the money, take it to the next level. So how do you deal with that? How do you grow that? So I love to do these things called house parties. So you have a willing board. So ask a board member, are you willing to open up your house to have a house party? It's not a party, y'all. It's an intimate gathering of 10 people that your board member may knows. It's a 2-hour kind of mixer mingle. They come to the house. The board member says, my name is XYZ. This is why this is the organization I've been giving all my time to. The CEO stands up really briefly, says something about the organization. You show a testimonial video about a client. And then literally that's it. They mix and mingle. You have a sign up by the door. If you're interested in having more information about our organization, please sign up at the door and we'll follow up with you. Now you have a list of 10 people, hopefully, who've signed up to say they're interested in learning more about the organization. And then you can start cultivating those people. So if each board member is willing to hold a house party, right, of that nature, then you can do that. Sometimes they're not comfortable doing it in a house. They might want to do it in their business. That's good. I had a board member who was a fisher, and he went out and caught all his fish, and then he had a fish fry, and we turned it into a house party. He had like 40 people there. Literally 2 hours. You spend the top 15, 20 minutes talking about the organization, and then it's mingle, get to know the guests, get to know the people. Everything is branded. You have kind of like great if you have napkins with your logo on it, little slide things like that. But if you concentrate and do a series of those throughout the year, maybe once a quarter, if you want to be aggressive, once every 2 months, that's going to grow your list of potential donors. Then you as a staff can start cultivating those donors, get them on the newsletter list, invite them to events, make phone calls, things like that, where you put them in the pipeline and you start cultivating them and stewarding them. And during the pandemic, I had a client that I worked with. We did these house parties on Zoom, believe it or not, right? So board members would invite people onto the Zoom. On Zoom is much less time, about 30 minutes. We talked about, again, why they got invited. CEO says a little something, show a little video, or have a client testimonial, and then ask people to provide the information if they want to learn more about the organization. And that way you start the cultivation process. So here's another one. On the idea of pathways for fundraising, what if your organization doesn't do events like raffles and galas? What sort of pathway can we give them? So you need to tell them what the pathways is. I'm unsure about if you don't do events, but there's many pathways. So for example, with my organization, it wasn't just about events or galas and things like that, or raffles. We had, here's one, believe it or not, after school program. We had program fees for the summer program. So board members, if you can make a referral to kids who can sign up to our program, right? One board member, and one board member was really good at it. She would go out and tell parents about our summer program, and we would ask what was the referral, and they would say the board member's name, right? So that's one way. And we just gave them a target number, and that they were actively out there talking about it. And when we asked, when people signed up for the program, they was like, "Oh, Miss Judy told me about it," so we knew right away. So that's one. You just look at your revenue sources, and you determine where the board can have an impact or influence on those revenue sources. So here's another one. One of our revenue sources was rental income. And so we would literally, put out there that we had rentals. And when people came in and signed a rental agreement, we asked them, how did you hear about this program? How did you hear about our rental program? And if they told us a board member, then the board member got credit for that. So it could be maybe, whatever your revenue source is, and you give the goal. That becomes your pathway. So another source of income that we had was bingo. So it could be bingo related. Just look at your revenue sources, see where the board can have an impact and some influence over there, and then create the pathways based on that. Not necessarily, I would say, board members they may have some influence over grants, I had several board members that did have influence over grants, but that one's kind of hard and it's kind of different. And the pathway could be different. It could be attend to meetings at the superintendent's office. So you need to be clear and creative, and it's based on your revenues, right? So, and I would challenge you, without knowing all your revenue sources, to look at it that way. And if there is not, then maybe you should create something where the board can have an impact on. And that will make them feel good. Other than that, they're just kind of sitting there and they don't have that responsibility. And that's where it goes, well, my board's not a fundraising board. They never had to do a fundraiser, and they're relying on one source. And that's when your organization can go away if that source of funding goes away. So what do you put on letterhead for board recognition? Their names, title, and company. Oh, good one. So on our board letterhead, we would put their name, and then we would put their companies. Yes. So it would be and their position within our organization. So for example, it would say, if Joe Kyoga was our board chair, which he was, it would say Joe Kyoga, board chair, and then it would have the name of his business, right? So that's how we did that. And some people don't want that up there, so they might just put Joe Kyoga and board chair, because if they're well known in the community, people already know where they work. But then there's some that it's okay and you want them to know. So who is the person who should oversee the board in this way? Like, who recognizes board members' special days? Ask them to be involved. Keep in touch. Is this the ED, development director, or who? It is the executive director. It is the CEO. It is not the development director, right? So the CEO, in my estimation, has two things to take care of. Take care of the board and take care of the money. If you can do those two things, you're going to be a successful CEO. So in taking care of the board, recognize your board on special days. So when board members filled out our board member application, they, in the recruitment process, you go through that recruitment process, they go through an interview process, they get selected for the board. They have to apply, they have to put in an application. And so on that application, we ask them for their birthday. We don't need to know the year. We ask them for the day and the month, right? And so we're doing that intentional. We ask them for their wedding anniversary. That's intentional because we want to know so we can celebrate those things. And so it is the ED that does that. Now, it's the ED that, gathers that information, take care of the board and the chair. The resource development person can help coordinate those activities. So the resource development person can be like, don't forget, it is such and such birthday this month. Let's order the cake and get it to the board meeting. So y'all work hand in hand, right? But it has to be a priority for the CEO or the ED for these things to happen. And then the resource development person help coordinate those things. We're a small organization, and I'm wondering how much time in a regular work week do you contribute to board relationships and work? Honey, I spent a lot of time on board relationship and work as a small organization because, like you said, you're small. There's only so many hours in a week. I'm already killing myself. So I had to sit down and I had to consciously say, I'm spending 50 hours a week here. So I can't give anymore. So how am I using those 50 hours a week? And are they a benefit to me to use them that way? And initially, I was using those 50 hours a week to put out fires, to respond to emails, to do the things that I was comfortable with. But they weren't getting me anywhere. Not in the fundraising, not in the big vision that I had. And so I had to say, okay, this is all the time I have. How much time do I put in and what return am I going to get? And so I realized I needed to spend time with the board so that I can then engage them. Because a lot of people think they have a fundraising problem and they don't have a fundraising problem. They have a board problem. So if you get the board right, the fundraising will come easier. Get the board right, the fundraising will come easier. So here's the question. I got an hour in my day. Do I spend that hour working on an email and responding to email? Or do I spend that hour going and taking a board member out for lunch? Those are the questions that you have to ask yourself. And I ask myself that all the time. And I made the choice to go to lunch with the board member because I'm building that relationship. And that's going to come back to help me. So I want you to understand that, yes, it's a daily choice. It's a choice that you have to make. And some people are more comfortable sitting in their office and responding to phone calls and doing emails than they are getting up, taking a break, and going and deal with a board member, going out to lunch with a board member. And so you have to make that choice because you only have so much time in a day. So here's another one. What do you do to educate or get buy-in from a board that was not recruited with explicit fundraising expectations and has no paid staff? Woo. So as a volunteer board, they were not recruited with explicit fundraising. So this is what I would do, and I've said this over and over again, you got to start with board education. Once you start with board education, they understand what their roles and responsibility is, then you can introduce board giving. And if the message doesn't sound good coming from you as the founder or other board members, then have a third party come in and say that message, because there's best practices out there, and sometimes they have to hear it from someone else. So yes, somebody asked for a sample board member certificate. I can share a sample board member certificate. So how do you manage board members who do not follow through on commitments or participate? I got you. I'm going to go back to, how are you communicating with them? Are you communicating with them on the format that they prefer? And are you following up with them to the point of 2 to 3, sometimes 4 phone calls? So it's funny that you said that, and I know it becomes an internal thing. And so I'll share this with you. So back on March the 7th, I sent an initial request to a potential donor that had sponsored something last year. And I sent it out and I didn't hear anything. And so I said, that's normal, right? March the 7th, event is in June. Didn't hear anything. So I sent it again. I made myself a note, sent it again. I sent it again on April the 7th. So I waited a month. Didn't hear anything. So then last week, I sent a text. I didn't hear anything. So yesterday, I called. I left a voicemail. Didn't hear anything. Today, I sent a text and I said, hey, just following up on the communication that I sent. I said, we only have this many tables left, or we only have this whatever left. I said, let me know so I can start harassing someone else with a smiley face. I got an immediate response. Sometimes it is contact, follow up, and you feel like you're chasing people. And sometimes you are, but you also need to allow people an opportunity to get off the hook. And so that's what I said. I did this like 5 people. Just let me know so I can move on. That's all I need to know. And every one of them responded and said, yes, I'll do a table. Yes, I'll do this. Or no, I will only do $500, or no, this. So how many times did I reach out to those people though, in order to get a response? And so you have to follow up. People are busy. Don't take it personal. Be professional about it. And then don't give people assignments that you know they're not going to do. You know your board members. You know if they're going to follow through or not. And so that's why I talk about playing into their strengths. So I had certain board members for certain things. I had a board member who was very savvy in the political realm. And so if I had a political problem, I called them and got advice. Made him feel so good because I sought his advice. But that was his area. I had another board member. That's Eddie. Eddie was my political person. What's going on here? I need your advice. I just dealt with this. How do I deal with this? That was his area. I had another board member that I may call when someone upset me and I needed them to talk me off the cliff. Hey, I just had this interaction. This is the email I want to send. They were like, don't send that email. Wait it out 24 hours. This is how I would do it. So people love giving their advice. And that is not asking for anything and other than their advice. And that's a part of building relationships. That's the top six ways to build relationship, is ask people for advice. And as you're building those relationships and asking for advice, then you will find out that their commitment towards what they say they're going to do will start to grow, because they're like, oh, this person or this organization really needs my input, and they understand the commitment. And then at the end of the day, if a board member is really not being a board member, then that's a conversation that the board chair needs to have with that board member. So let me say this. The CEO is the gatekeeper for the staff. That means The CEO handles all the staff. The board chair is the gatekeeper for the board. And so if the staff is not doing what they're supposed to do, it's the CEO job to get them to do what they need to do, not the board's job. If the board is stepping over into the staff realm, they are wrong. They're diddly-daddling and things they ain't got no business doing. The only person that the board is in charge of, can hire and fire, is the CEO. Whereas on the board chair, the CEO has some influence over the board process. But if a board member is not doing what they're supposed to do, and the staff and everybody else has tried everything that they can possibly do, then it's the board chair that needs to pick up the phone or have a conversation and say, I don't know if this board is right for you. I don't know what's going on. Maybe you don't have the bandwidth or the time, but it's the board's chair job to do that. And sometimes the CEO has to remind the board chair that that's their job to do that. That's what they signed up for when they agreed to be board chair. And you need their support in that, because as we all know, one bad apple can ruin the bunch for everyone. And so here's our last set of questions here. Our last question. Can you talk about how this information can be translated to establishing a junior board or a young professionals board? Actually, it's the same process. Hopefully you have a recruitment process in place. You have identified some people that you want to have serve on your junior board or your young professional board. It's not just anybody, because at the junior level and all of that, they're required to get involved in the community. So you don't want people who are required to be involved in the community and they just get on that board because they get their name on a letterhead, or they get to tell people they're on the board without actually doing anything. And so you still need to have a recruitment process in place. And you put it, they fill out you say, we are forming a junior board. Now, this one I would probably throw a wide net. I would say we're forming a junior board, and these are going to be very specific about these are what the responsibilities are going to be, have a job description. If you're interested in applying, we have several slots that are available, and we're interviewing, right? And so make sure they understand that they're being interviewed. And if they are being interviewed, then there's an option for you to say no. And if you're going to say no, then you need to be respectful and say no quickly, and not be like, you have people waiting forever. So I always like the language of we have slots and we have positions, and we're interviewing several people for the slots that we have available. That way there's no miscommunication about if I apply, it's automatic that I'm on the board, right? Whether it's junior, whether it's a governing board, or whether it's a young professional board. And then when in the interview process, that you need to be very clear about why they are why they're interviewing for, and what the expectation is. What are your expectations? Why are you forming this board as a board member? How many times are we going to meet? What's the expectation? Some people do junior boards, and it's just a junior board that you're going to put on this particular event for us once a year, but we're going to be meeting quarterly, something like that. So whatever that is, have that in place. So I do believe that I got to all the questions that were posed. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to do this. And I just want to say thank you, and thank you to Give Butter for the opportunity to be able to ask and address all those questions. So if you weren't satisfied with any of those answers, or you want even more clarification, please just reach out to me. My website is www.supportingworldhope.com. And again, my name is Sabrina Walker Hernandez. Y'all be blessed. Thank you.